Welcome to the Comic Corner. My name is Damon. What we do here is news, reviews, and interviews for all things comic books. And today we do have an interview with an industry veteran from his early days with Judge Dredd to Killing Time of 2000 AD, from DC and Vertigo, working on titles like Swamp Thing, Starman, The Invisibles, and JSA, to Marvel, working on titles like The 12 and Fantastic Four First Family. The artist on Dark Horse's Paranoid Gardens, written by Gerard Way and Sean Simon, Chris Weston. Chris, how are you doing?
Oh, not bad, thank you. I'm looking a little bit red and flustered because I was nearly late for our interview. We're good. I made it in time.
You made it just in time. We have plenty of time. We have all the time here. And we'll talk about time because in Paranoid Gardens, time is interesting wherever that is. But we're going to go all the way back in time to your very beginning roots as a comic book fan. Something I always ask anyone who comes on here for the first time.
Yep.
What's your comic book origin story? How did you get into comics, not in the industry, but as a fan?
Oh, right. Well, I've always been a huge comic book fan. I mean, I was a bit of an army brat as a kid. My dad was in the forces, so we went and lived in foreign countries for a bit, like Germany and Cyprus. And in some places we went to stay, we didn't even bother getting a television because in those days you could pick, we'd have to watch like German TV or local TV, and my parents were like, oh, we can't be bothered. So, like, I think in order to keep me occupied, my dad just bought me loads of comics all the time. The great thing about that is my dad didn't just buy the comics. He read them as well, and we'd talk about them all the time. And these were mainly British comics like Lion and Hotspur and Valiant and my favourite one, Vulcan. They would come out weekly, so we'd sit and discuss what because they usually ended on a cliffhanger of some kind. Mm-hmm. What do we think is going to happen next week? So the comics were a big part of my life. Whenever there was like a new Asterix book out, my dad would always buy it for me immediately, or Tintin. So I grew up constantly reading comics, and I was always drawing as well. So if I wasn't reading comics, I was drawing them as well. I used to draw this cartoon comic series of my own called The Dustbin Army, which is basically about these living dustbins that were soldiers and fixed tanks and things. I think that's my army brat coming out as well. Yeah, I wasn't a very sporty kid. I was one of those kids that would rather stay indoors at break time and read comics rather than go out and do rough stuff.
What do you think what do you think the difference is, for you at least, between like the Western American comics and the British comics of your youth?
Well, I think the first major difference is British comics were in black and white, like 95% in black and white, and so I think there was definitely a style difference as well in the art as well, because obviously when you're doing black and white artwork, the artist got to put a little bit more work into the shading and shadows and stuff, all the stuff that would have been covered by the colorist. The artist has kind of got to put that in itself. So I always felt that British comics looked a bit more shadowy and creepier than American comics. American comics look really sort of bright and glossy and in contrast. So that I always found British comics a little bit more sort of moody and creepy. What's the other difference? I think there's a storytelling difference as well. I think whereas American comics got like 22 pages or 24 pages to tell a story, British comics, because they were weekly, and because the comics were anthologies, you only get like 3 pages or 5 pages to tell a story, and so the comics were crammed in with way more detail and way more amount of panels on a page. You'd rarely get a splash page, for example. So they're a bit more intense, really. Sort of, I think they'd force you to stare at the page for a bit longer, whereas American comics have more of a wow factor. You turn the page and go, bang! They're more dynamic. I mean, I love both, really, both approaches. But I'm probably more a product of the British approach, really.
So do you prefer when you're making art the black and white style? Because very clearly when we'll talk about Paranoid Gardens in a bit, that creepiness, that everlasting shadows of it all kind of definitely has impacted on your style.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, that's probably why I fitted in with Vertigo earlier on in my career, because that tended to be, doing more creepy, sinister sort of material. That's probably why a lot of British comic book artists ended up doing the sort of material they did at Vertigo. I think it's only sort of like not many of them went into the sort of superhero area. I think Alan Davis is probably a British artist. I think he does brilliant superhero stuff, or Brian Hitch. But we tended to go more down the more sort of creepy route, didn't we?
Seemed to fit, and it worked really, really well because those Vertigo comics, even now, starting to make a little bit, the concepts of it all starting to make a little bit of a comeback. Even in this, where we're going to talk about Paranoid Gardens, which is a brand new book from Dark Horse. You're working on the art, Gerard Way, famously working on the writing alongside Sean Simon. How did this opportunity come up for you?
It just came out of the blue. I mean, I think from what I'm told, I think Gerard's a big fan of 90s Vertigo comics, and so he probably wanted an artist who could draw in that style. So what better than to get a 90s Vertigo artist, And I don't know who they asked before me, but whoever it was probably unavailable, so it ended up being me.
We're absolutely killing it. Could you describe, so far as we're recording this, the first issue is out. When this is released, the second issue will be out. Can you describe what this book is about? Because there's a lot of layers to this, like a very thick onion.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that attracted me, first of all, was it's the setup kind of reminded me of my favorite TV show, The Prisoner, because they're both about a seemingly benign establishment. In The Prisoner's case, it's the village, and in Paranoid Gardens' case, it's this care home, sort of with lots of trees and grass. So they're both sort of set in places supposed to be really nice, but both have sinister things shifting underneath the surface. In fact, the first Zoom call I had with Gerard, I wore a Prisoner T-shirt, and he got it immediately. And I said, "Oh, Prisoner, yes, that's exactly what we're going for." So I called it out well, really. Yeah. So it's basically, to answer your question, it's set in a strange, rundown care home that was probably built in the 1970s. The carpets are all a bit garish, and everything's got a slight coating of mildew on it. And it's populated by really strange people like ghosts and superheroes that are having nervous breakdowns and aliens. And they're being careful by our lead character called Lou and her colleagues. But it's one of those questions, it's a bit like The Prisoner, where it's hard to decide who's a resident, who's being cared for, and who's doing the caring, really. It could be a grey area in between where, the carers aren't necessarily who they say they are.
The layers to it, like an onion. Yes. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of different characters in here because this is sort of like an interdimensional, interplanetary facility. Yeah. So you do get like these weird looking aliens, or like the superheroes coming in completely freaking out, and maybe the building itself is alive. And then there's this.
I think the building is definitely a character itself. and as it goes on, that becomes more, that theme becomes more overt, really. And there's there's hints that the very ground it's built on has a special like power to it, and there's like there's a company that would quite like to buy the whole place just so it can have access to these powers that are in the landscape itself.
The company aspect is one that's introduced on the very first few pages, but you don't realize it until the very end pages of the first issue. And that's where you have, again, like we were talking about the layers of it all. Like, yes, we have this main character, Lou, who's seemingly trying to care for these people in this facility, but then you have this secret organization who all spawn these very scary looking monkey masks. Nothing like a good monkey mask to just put everybody off guard. And you're like, what's their deal? Who's trying to buy this? Are they good guys? They definitely don't seem like good individuals.
Yeah, I've never shown it, but at one point they were going to be aardvarks.
No way.
I've got a whole page which I've never shown, a whole page of character designs where their faces are based on aardvarks, but I think we were rightly told no, it's too much. No one knows what an aardvark looks like, so we made it simpler, and because they're sort of loosely based on this fictional cartoon character called Cheeky Monkey. And Cheeky Monkey was inspired by this British comedian called John Thompson, and he used to play this character who was an awful ventriloquist, and his dreadful monkey thing was, he used to call it Cheeky Monkey. He's a northern comedian. Oh, stop it, Cheeky Monkey! And I mentioned that when we just all laughed, and that kind of fitted the character really.
The odes to the Cheeky Monkey in like some of these little back closets almost look like my background a little bit, but just a little more Cheeky Monkey everywhere type of thing. So it's like, you know, little ode to the Cheeky Monkey. It's very fun. There's Cheeky Monkey stuff everywhere, but as you mentioned, there's a lot of back and forth when you're the artist and with the writers of this book. What's that like creative process when you're going back and forth with Sean, with Gerard, pitching ideas, them kind of giving you the layout and your way to visualize this world? How does that back and forth work with them?
It's all quite smooth, really. With the one exception of changing it from an aardvark to a monkey, I can't think of any other major. I say disagreements, but they're sort of, it's brainstorming, not disagreements. I can't think of anything really. I mean, Gerard sent me a sheet of designs that he'd drawn of the characters, and they look amazing. And I said to him, "Why don't you just draw this comic? What I can bring to this, it's amazing." And he's a really good artist. But he assured me he didn't want to draw it. So it's just a case of sort of me taking his sheet and developing them, and I had to kind of, as I've described before, Westonify them, which basically means adding a lot more detail, a lot more texture and stuff. And also I've got to take what's like a little sketch that he's done and imagine it in a more sort of from every angle. So I did a lot of character sheets where you'd see the characters from different angles. But but I didn't stray far from his designs at all, really. Just sort of, developed them a bit, from each angle.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you took, that as an inspiration. Is there any other inspirations? Like you said, you have that Vertigo Comics background, right?
Yeah.
How much of that has inspired the look of this book?
Well, I guess the other big influence was Watchmen. because the thing I liked about Watchmen, it was the strict layout that Dave Gibbons did. I mean, he used a 9-panel grid. I didn't quite want to go that far, but what I took from Watchmen was keeping all the action within the panel. I've rarely had anything bursting out of a panel. I've rarely done overlapping panels, and most of all, I've stayed within the bleed on the page because, I mean, it's a crazy, convoluted story, and I think if I did crazy, convoluted art on top of that, it would be overload for the reader. I think I wanted to take this crazy story but tell it as straight as possible. Sort of like when you've got a science fiction film. If the special effects look realistic and real, then you're going to buy it a lot more than if the special effects are rubbish. So I just wanted to tell the story as straight as possible, really. So yeah, I was definitely thinking of Watchmen, and also I think one of the big parts of Watchmen's success was it was easy for non-regular comic readers to pick up and read, because I'm always amazed when you show comics to people who don't normally read comics. They usually say something like, "Oh, I wouldn't even know where to begin with this," and especially if it's an art style that's got quite a mad composition on the page, composition of panels, and so many people tell me, I don't know how to read this, but if you show them like a Tintin book or an Asterix book or Watchmen, where the panels are very evenly spaced out and what's one to the other, they find that easy to read. So I wanted this story to be available to as wide an audience as possible.
No, absolutely. When you're going back and forth, and what's your favorite part of the comic creation process with this book in particular?
Let me have a think. I do like the development stage. I like that phase where I'd taken Gerard's drawings, and then I was getting to do them, look at them in my style. Really, that's really good fun, and I liked designing the care home itself. That's really good fun. I did quite a lot of research into that. It had to have a specific look, where it had to look sort of 1970s, I think. And I'm not a big fan of 70s architecture, so I wanted to look as much like that as possible.
A lot of creepy wallpaper around that. The 70s architecture.
Oh my god! And all that wallpaper, it was all hand drawn, and one of the ladies I share a studio with was like, I'd be sitting there for hours drawing all these loops and patterns on the walls in the panels, and she was like, "Why don't you just do it digitally? You just scan in a texture and paste it on the walls." And I thought, no, it's got to be hand drawn. It's got to. I want to keep the artwork consistent. It just helps make the world more cohesive when it's all hand done.
So this whole book is hand done?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I did. The only other thing I've done on this that I haven't normally done it is there's a bit of pencil shading in there as well, which I haven't done before. I've got this really soft black pencil, and I just thought, because I wanted to look grimy and stained, and it was perfect for getting little sort of grimy patterns on the walls and sort of bits of like mildew areas onto the artwork. This is the first time in the past, whenever I've drawn black and white comics, I say black and white because I'm not colouring this. I've always sent the artwork off in a bitmapped format, which is basically when the artwork's divided into just black or white. There's no grey tones, but this is the first time I've ever done a comic where I've scanned the art as a colour image and kept all the grey tones. It looks so much better, I think. I think more people are doing that now as well.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I love the coloring process and the inking and penciling process because like all pun intended, it's like a band in a way.
Yeah.
Like you have your lead singer is almost like your writer, and then your artist is your guitarist, and et cetera, et cetera, et
Well,
cetera.
that's a great opportunity for me to mention the amazing job Dave Stewart is doing on the art, on the colours. My mind is blown, and it's probably the best colouring I've ever had on my own artwork. Um, I have coloured my own artwork in the past, but I don't think I could do it as well or as quick as he's doing it. I'm so delighted. I keep emailing saying, "Oh man, this is brilliant! I love it so much."
I love it when it all comes together. It's like a great
Oh
song,
yeah,
It's just when everything pieces together beautifully. It's a perfect mashup, and that transfers nicely into this. I ask this to everyone too, just like comics in general. It's such a special medium. It's something I love when comics do what only comics can do in a way. There's certain issues, certain paneling, certain different storytelling. What is it for you that makes comics special?
I think it's. I mean, in the old days, my answer would have been because we can do things that films can't do because the special effects didn't exist at the time. But unfortunately, through the advent of CGI, I think films can do more what comics are doing. Hence the boom in superhero films. But I think also but the great thing about what comics can do is, well, first of all, they can show you what characters are thinking. Either with thought balloons or caption boxes. I think you can get into a character's head better in comics. I mean, I think that's the main thing I can think of.
No, absolutely. I mean, you have just the regular narration that can kind of help go through, but
Yeah.
even so, when you go back and you start to read like comics from the 60s, 70s, way more thought bubbles than those. You
Mm,
never you never not know what the character's thinking in those.
yeah.
And now you see less thought bubbles. Sometimes you still do, but
Mm,
less. And a lot of it is done in the faces and the interactions themselves. So it's very interesting to see like the evolution of that, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Also, it's easier to uh, look at something and then go back a couple of pages just to think, you might see something going, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why have they done that? And then few pages later, go, oh, that explains it. And then you can go back and look and re-look at what you've seen before with fresh eyes.
So you've worked, like we mentioned before, DC, Vertigo, Marvel, 2000 AD. You've been in the industry for quite some time. Is there
Yeah.
any character in particular that you somehow haven't gotten your hands on yet that you're still itching to get a hold of?
Yeah. Let me have a think. I still haven't done Down Dare yet. I became so close, but I I freaked out at the last minute. It's like it was such a holy grail for me. I almost got the opportunity to draw it, and then I was just like, I can't do this. And I had to phone up and say, I'm sorry, I can't do this. But Down Dare is kind of like the British version of Flash Gordon, really. He's like a 1950s dashing and decent space astronaut, and he gets to fight, evil aliens and stuff. So, he's definitely on my list of characters I would like to do. It's kind of a dead IP now, unfortunately. I couldn't see anyone buying it, unfortunately. But I might do something similar. People keep saying to me, Chris, just do your own Damn Dare. Come up with your own 1950s space heroes. So that's probably the way I'll go at some point. That's probably the British one. One other British one. There's a character called the Spider, a lot of British comics in the 60s were about, in contrast to the Americans, they were about supervillains rather than superheroes. We had and The Spider was a story about a supervillain, and it was actually written by Jerry Siegel of Superman fame.
Mm-hmm.
And he was basically this weird character. He was a bit like if you imagine the Shadow, you know, the old pulp character, the Shadow.
Mm-hmm.
He's like the Shadow, but in a wetsuit, basically.
Oh,
with like these big, what looked like oxygen tanks on his back and pipes coming over him. He's amazing, really creepy looking character. Looks a bit like Spock as well, with pointy ears and slicked down black hair and mad eyebrows. Quite like to have done him, but the dream thing to do would be to put the two characters together, like have the Spider versus Superman. That's a ambition one day. And the Superman, really, I've done was it a 10-page Superman story with Rob Williams years ago, and that was so much fun. And I still feel I need to do more Superman at some point. He's my favorite American character.
Superman's made such a fascinating and incredible turn over the last 4 years, it feels like, because there was a period where people, the general consensus was, the Boy Scout, the goody two-shoes. And now it's almost feels like we kind of want and need that again. You want the guy that does good even when he can't, and it's a resurgence in the character, and you can even see that on the shelves and in the sales, and that's very exciting for me because I love Superman. I love that.
Too.
He's the guy who could do bad, but he just doesn't, because that's what makes him Superman.
Well, he's never far from my desk, Superman. I'm always thinking about it and reading old Superman comics. I mean, I like the 60s. The late 50s, 60s. I like the Silver Age Superman most of all. The Kurt Schaffenberger, Kurt Swan, Al Plastino, Otto Binder. Is it called the Weisinger era? I guess. Really, I love all that stuff. It's just so inventive. It was like every month there was like a new idea, like Red Kryptonite, the Bottle City of Candor, Brainiac. I've compared it to. I think in terms of sheer inventiveness and whimsy, I think it's America's Alice in Wonderland. Wow. Just, with the amount of mad ideas. Like this week, Superman's got an ant's head. Next week he's got a lion's head. Or his hairs won't stop growing. It's Alice in Wonderland. Like taking a. Way she sort of finds mushrooms to eat or whatever it is, and she shrinks small.
Yeah.
It's so like that.
I've never heard anyone describe that before, and that is fascinating. Because it's a character that you could do very grounded things with, and that's what the Golden Age is. And man, Superman in the Golden Age was an absolute menace. It was hilarious. And then as you move on to the Silver Age, that's when you get to go into the weird with the characters. So then you definitely absolutely get that. Is a I've never heard anyone describe it like that, and it really works. It really truly works.
Alice in Wonderland,
Yeah. That really, truly works. Before we wrap up and move on, one last thing just on Paranoid Gardens. What are you most excited about for readers to be able to see going forward from issue 2 on?
Oh, right. Well, it was similar to like the Silver Age Superman. The readers are constantly going to be bombarded by new things, and it's probably why I probably attracted to the material. There is a sort of Silver Age vibe to it where mad things happen, but you just kind of go with it. I mean, issue 2 is going to be, you're going to see like our version of Rover the balloon from Prisoner. Do you know the Prisoner at all?
A little bit, yes.
Oh, hang on. Typical. Oh, hang on. Sorry. You edit that out.
Yeah.
Let's start that bit again. So yeah, in issue 2, you're going to see our version of the prisoner. The prisoner's rover balloon, which is like the guardian of the village, and we wanted something that kind of serves the same function, that it stops people from escaping or possibly stops people from getting in. And they're called. We've come up with this idea called the beekeepers, because I've always thought that like beekeepers, with the hood and the gauze, they look absolutely terrifying. They look like a Doctor Who villain or something.
Yeah.
So you're going to see them. What other mad ideas? Oh my god! There's usually so much happening. You're going to see more each month. You're going to have a few extra pieces of Lou's story and find out why she's in the place as well.
Mm-hmm.
If she's there as a carer, or if she's there as a patient. Who knows? I don't want to give too much away.
Who's to say?
Yeah,
I'm very excited for more of this. Your artwork has been phenomenal, and of course, like between Gerard and Simon, the storytelling is mad. As you say, you never know where it's gonna go, and that's to be expected when you have a story with those two on it, because the ideas I can imagine are bouncing off the wall in that development phase. Is just, it can go from anywhere where you have an aardvark mask to Cheeky Monkey mask. You never know.
Yes, I think I made the right call on that. Yeah. But one day I'll release the aardvark version.
One last thing, and this is just advice in general to aspiring artists. What would you tell anyone trying to get into the industry now? One bit of advice.
Life drawing. Do lots and lots of life drawing. What you're seeing behind me now, I'm actually. This isn't all my own. I work in a shared studio. Normally there's other artists milling about in here, but we put on life drawing classes in here, and I think they're kind of invaluable to draw the human form, as opposed to getting in to the industry. It's very hard for me to say. I think things have changed so much since the days when I got in there. I guess I think you can't. I think you still can't be going to conventions and meeting editors and just show your stuff. Really, I mean, in many ways, maybe there's more ways to show your stuff off now on the internet. And put your stuff out there. Draw a little comic and tweet it, and it may even pester people if necessary, saying, "Oh, have a look, any chance of a RT on this?"
That's exactly how we had an interview a couple weeks ago with a artist writer, Corin Howell. That's exactly how she just got some of her work published, was putting it on social media, and editors saw it and said, "Hey, how about we turn this into a full comic book?" Which I think is just super fun, and you build an audience that way, and you never know where it could take it from there. Where can people find you, Chris, on the interwebs? And do you have any other works, new works, previous works you'd like to push?
Let me have a think. I'm addicted to Twitter, really, and
Me too.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of a mass exodus from Twitter last week, wasn't there? But I'm going to cling to it for that shit.
Mm-hmm. It's a ship, all right. Whether it's sinking or floating, I'll still be on it.
Oh yeah, I'm tied to the mast. I'm not going anywhere. So I think I'm at Western Front on there. I'm on Facebook as well, but I don't frequent that place as frequently. I'm on Instagram, usually at Western Front. Really, I'm on Blue Sky, but haven't got into the habit of visiting that every day yet. Twitter's enough for me. It's like I can't take it.
It's a lot.
I know. And what else have I got coming up? I've just submitted a pitch to Dark Horse for a new comic book series. So fingers crossed. I'm waiting the the green light saying yes, we love it, or no, find somewhere else. So and that might be a proper full-on sci-fi thing, which sort of comes back to maybe I won't do Dan Dare, but I might do something similar. Yeah. What else? Just in case anyone's wondering, I did a Kickstarter campaign for an old series I did at DC called Time Breakers, and don't worry, I'm still working on that as well. I had to teach myself a lot of publishing skills to do that, but I haven't run off with the money, I promise.
Self-publishing is a bear on its own. Absolutely.
I had no
absolutely.
idea.
The amount of stuff you got to do for that is a mountain to climb. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks very
This
much.
was an absolute pleasure. Be sure to go check out Paranoid Gardens. I love it. My co-hosts, both of them, they love it. It's been super fun so far. 2 issues in. Definitely continue to check them out and just be along for the ride, because man, I've read every book that Gerard has ever put out, and you're on for a ride the second you sign up for one of those, because you don't know where anything is gonna go, and next thing you know, next thing you know, you become way too attached to some of these characters, and who knows what happens to them.
Yeah, great stuff. Oh, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Of course. Be sure to go follow the Agents of Fandom right here on YouTube, subscribe, and follow our Twitter account at Agents Fandom on Twitter, and Agents of Fandom everywhere else. Chris, thanks again, and until next time.